My team lead told me I was too slow for leadership after sending 3M edits, so I hit a note on slide 12 claiming my work. The client saw it, canceled the deal, and said they'd only sign if I was in the room. It was 3:07 a.m. in Austin, and my phone lit up so hard it burned the dark. A Slack ping from my team lead, Kara. Where are the edits? The client meets at 9. This is why you're not leadership material. You're too slow. I stared at the ceiling in my East Riverside apartment, cheeks hot, heart running like I'd been shoved into traffic. I'd already sent her a clean deck at midnight, 36 tight slides for a healthcare tech pilot. She ghosted. Now she was awake and angry, and I was, apparently, not leadership material. I got out of bed, opened my laptop on the kitchen counter, and went back in. I polished every graph, tightened every line, rebuilt the data flow slide from scratch. Then I did the petty, survival brain thing that people do when they're tired and done being used. On slide 12, the market fit snapshot, I tucked a small footer in our brand font. Prepared by my name, unauthorized use is a violation of IP policy. It wasn't a threat. It was the truth our handbook shoved in the onboarding portal. I used a color that only popped on presentation mode. If she actually reviewed the deck, she'd see it. But she didn't. At 6:11 a.m., I shipped the final and texted, all set. Kara replied with a thumbs up. Nothing else. By 9 o'clock a.m., she walked into the downtown client boardroom without me. That was her new habit. Keep me invisible, harvest the credit. I logged into the Zoom link expecting to be the silent box. Kara started her usual speedrun intro, acting like she'd carried this project from birth. Slide 5, slide 8, slide 11. Her voice was smooth, fake sincere, the kind that sounds like a great haircut. Then came slide 12. The client's VP of strategy, sharp bob, silver pen, leaned forward. Hold, she said, dry and direct. Who is my name? Kara blinked. That's the name OFUH, the analyst who did some early work, but The VP cut in, turned to her team, then back to the camera where my muted rectangle sat. Is my name on this call? I unmuted. I am. The VP smiled, but it wasn't friendly. We received a previous version of this narrative from your company with a different author listed. Our counsel flagged this footer. If the content belongs to my name, we won't proceed without them in the room for all subsequent meetings. And I'll need confirmation that no one is misrepresenting authorship. Silence. Kara's jaw tightened. Our account director, Eli, suddenly appeared in the participant list like he'd been yanked out of bed. Slack lit up on my screen with separate messages. Eli, what is that footer? Kara, take it down now. Eli, join me after this. The VP of strategy kept going. We need integrity partners. We're not paying for stolen work. Then she did the worst thing for Kara and the best thing for me. She ended the meeting early. We'll reconvene this afternoon with my name present. Kara ended the Zoom, and within a minute my phone exploded. A call from Eli, 3 from Kara, 1 from HR, because apparently everything is a learning moment in our office on West 6th Street. I sat there at my counter, tea gone cold, hands shaking. Before I called anyone back, I scrolled through my Slack DMs, rereading months of messages where Kara promised, I'll make sure leadership sees your work. And then, client prefers one voice, I'll speak for us. And then nothing. I thought about the Friday I watched her walk out with a bottle of View from the client, smiling like she'd invented oxygen. The thing is, this wasn't the first time. It was just the first time someone outside noticed. I finally answered Eli's call. He didn't say hello. Get downtown now, he said. Bring your laptop, and he hesitated. There's something else we need to talk about. Legal found your name on a document, one you never signed. My skin went cold. What document? He took a breath. A prototype agreement the client claims you approved 2 weeks ago. The line went quiet, and I realized what that meant as my stomach turned. I grabbed my keys and walked out into the bright, Texas morning, knowing that slide 12 was just the first crack in something much uglier. I joined that company 2 years ago thinking it was my big break. Mid-sized marketing consultancy, downtown Austin, sleek office, kombucha on tap, everyone walking around with that fake startup energy that feels like success. I came from a smaller agency in Round Rock where I was underpaid, but at least respected. When I got the offer here, $92K and the title Strategy Associate, I thought I'd finally made it. Kara was my team lead from day one. Early 30s, MBA from Rice, always in black turtlenecks, the kind of woman who could destroy you in a meeting and still get drinks with you after. I admired her at first. She called me her best find, told me I had real leadership potential. For the first few months, I stayed late, polished her decks, made her look good. She said she'd mentor me. But the more I did, the more invisible I became. She started taking my drafts, stripping my name, and passing them off as hers. When I asked about it, she said, "You're still learning how to represent the team. You'll get your credit later." I believed her. Because you want to believe people like her, confident, charming, respected by upper management. I told myself this was the price of paying dues. Things changed when we landed the Strayline Health account, a multi-million-dollar pilot deal with a client that could make or break the quarter. Kara assigned me to lead the research and framework. She said, "Don't worry, I'll handle the client-facing stuff. You just build the bones." So I did. I spent 2 months buried in data, calls, and revisions. I built the whole damn narrative, target analysis, market entry path, financial projections, the works. Kara just polished the delivery slides and talked pretty in meetings. I didn't mind at first. I just wanted it to go well. But after the first pitch, she started excluding me from follow-ups. I'd find out about client updates through hallway chatter or the occasional forwarded email. Then one Friday, I saw the internal newsletter. Team lead Kara Jenkins drives client engagement strategy for Strayline. My name wasn't even in the tiny credits at the bottom. That one burned. I went to Eli, the account director, technically Kara's boss, and told him I felt cut out. He gave me the corporate empathy voice. "You're doing great work, name, but Kara's got to be the face of the team right now. Clients trust consistency. Don't take it personally." That was the moment I realized nobody was going to stand up for me. I started keeping receipts. Every version, every time-stamped file, every email where she said, "I'll take it from here." I saved Slack messages to a private folder, not because I planned to do anything yet, but because something in my gut told me Kara wasn't just selfish, she was dangerous. Then came the Friday 2 weeks before that 3 a.m. message. Kara told me she was going to streamline some of the work and needed my approval on a few small documents so she could submit faster. I never saw them, never signed anything. But apparently, legal did. And now, sitting in that Uber to the office, staring out at the sun cutting through the frost on the bridges over Lady Bird Lake, I couldn't stop replaying Eli's words. "They found your name on a document you never signed." That's when I remembered something small, an odd detail I'd brushed off back then. One night, Kara had asked me to send her my digital signature file for branding consistency. She said she needed it for the client templates, and I had sent it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it felt like the biggest mistake of my life. When I got to the office, Eli was waiting in the lobby, jaw tight. He didn't even make eye contact as he led me toward the glass meeting room. And sitting there, perfectly calm, perfectly put together, was Kara. A coffee in one hand, her phone in the other, and a smile that said she still thought she could control the story. The air in that glass conference room felt tight, like everyone was pretending oxygen wasn't optional. Kara sat at the head of the table, legs crossed. Scrolling through her phone like this was just another client check-in. Eli stood by the screen, laptop open, eyes flicking between the two of us like he was watching a bomb he couldn't defuse. He started talking first. "Okay, so here's the situation. The client sent over a pre-contract template with your name digitally signed as the approving strategist." He clicked a slide. My signature, perfectly replicated, was there at the bottom of a PDF dated 2 weeks ago. Legals verifying whether this was an internal approval or something unauthorized. Kara finally looked up, voice syrup smooth. "It was a misunderstanding. I asked my name to review that draft, and I thought their sign-off in the email meant approval. We were on deadline." "That's not true," I said immediately, heart pounding. "You told me you were still revising. I never saw this version. I never approved anything." Eli's jaw flexed. "We'll figure that out. For now, HR's getting involved, and the client wants a call with both of you at 3. Kara leaned back, smiling slightly. "Of course, transparency's important." That fake composure was what made me lose it. "Transparency," I said, louder than I meant to. "You literally forged my signature. You've been taking my work for months, and now you're dragging my name into legal territory." Eli shot me a warning look. Keep your tone professional, please. I laughed, actually laughed. Professional. You're worried about tone when she's committing fraud? Kara finally dropped her act. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. Your emotional name, I understand, but you're misinterpreting a standard internal process. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. That sentence, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be, was the same one she'd used every time she cut me out, every time she twisted something small to make me look unstable. Eli sighed, rubbing his temple. Look, we're pausing the project until we sort this. Kara, no client contact without me. Name, work from home for now. That last part stung like hell. Work from home is corporate language for we don't know if you're the problem yet. I packed my bag in silence. Kara didn't even look at me as I left. But as the glass door closed, I saw her reflection in it, a tiny smirk curling at her lips. Outside, the late morning sun hit like a spotlight. My phone buzzed nonstop, HR emails, calendar invites, messages from coworkers asking, what happened? I didn't reply. I just walked. Down Congress, past the taco truck, where I used to get lunch with Kara when I still thought she was human. Past the office building where we'd landed our first small account. Everything about this city suddenly looked fake, like her voice was layered over it. By noon, I was sitting at a coffee shop with my laptop, reading through every file she'd ever sent me. The pattern was obvious once I looked with suspicion. Identical wording between my drafts and her final decks, timestamps edited, metadata wiped clean. She'd been copying my work, rebranding it, and forwarding it as hers for months. But the forged signature, that was new. That was her getting sloppy, desperate maybe. At 1:30, I got an email from HR. Subject: formal inquiry regarding document authorization. Please be available for a compliance interview tomorrow morning. Attached was a summary of concerns. It listed potential falsification of client-facing materials and breach of internal confidentiality protocols. In short, Kara's narrative was working. She'd already flipped it, painted herself as the responsible manager cleaning up my supposed mistake. I sat there for a long time, watching my cursor blink on the reply screen. Then I closed the laptop. If she was going to play dirty, I'd stop playing fair. So I started digging deeper, into backup servers, Slack archives, and old drafts that it thought were deleted. I still had admin credentials from when I'd helped test the new file system last quarter. And that's when I found something that made my stomach drop. A folder labeled Client Transition, Internal Only. Inside were 3 pitch decks. Every one of them had my name removed. But the file creation logs showed something else, something Kara couldn't erase. Each file was copied from my original directory on the same night she'd texted me, "Go offline, I'll clean this up." It was the digital equivalent of fingerprints. And just when I thought I'd found the proof that would finally end her, I opened the last document in that folder and saw a different name listed under author. Not Kara's, Eli's. It didn't register at first. I just stared at the metadata field author, Eli Thompson, and thought it had to be a glitch, maybe some weird permissions thing. But when I opened the next file, it was the same. And the next. Each deck had been stripped of my name, restructured to look executive polished, and tagged under Eli's user ID. Not Kara's. It hit me then, she hadn't done this alone. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through version histories. On one document, Kara's edits ended at 11:42 p.m. Then, 30 minutes later, Eli's name appeared. He'd made final adjustments and exported the version that went to the client. That was the version that erased me. I took screenshots of everything, metadata, timestamps, file paths. My hands shook the whole time. I'd spent months thinking Kara was the manipulator, the thief. But it turned out my own director was in on it. The more I pieced together, the uglier it got. In an archived Slack channel, I found a thread between Kara and Eli dated a month earlier. Kara: he's good but too loud about credit. Keep him off client till after signing. Eli: yeah, let's roll his data under your name. He'll get exposure later. Kara: exposure doesn't pay rent. Eli: exactly, but the bonus will. The bonus. I'd forgotten about that, the company's quarterly performance incentive tied to client signings. 10% of project revenue split between the leadership team. If Strayline signed, Kara and Eli would walk away with nearly 40 grand each. And I, the one who built the entire strategy, would get a $200 team recognition card and a round of empty applause at the next all hands. That's when it all clicked. They'd used me to do the groundwork, cut me out to protect their payout. And when I got too close to being visible, they forged my name to tie me to their dirty paperwork. So if anything blew up, I'd be the scapegoat. It wasn't incompetence. It was a setup. My hands were ice cold when I called my friend Maya, who worked in the finance department. She picked up whispering, "I'm in a meeting, make it quick." "Maya," I said, "can you check something for me? The Strayline Health cost breakdown. Who's listed as project lead and approver?" There was a pause, then, "Hold on, okay, found it. Approver E. Thompson, lead K. Jenkins. Why? No mention of me anywhere." I almost laughed, it was so clean. They'd already sanitized me out of the company records. That afternoon, Kara and Eli both joined the call with the client. I was CC'd but not invited to speak. The VP of strategy from Strayline wasn't buying it. She said, "We're pausing all progress until this authorship issue is resolved. Your internal credibility is unclear." You could practically hear Eli's jaw clench through the mic. He tried to sound composed, but his voice cracked once when she said my name. After the call ended, I got one message from Kara, "Kara, I'm trying to fix this. Don't make things worse for yourself." That phrasing, "for yourself," made my blood run hot. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the screenshots, the Slack messages, and the metadata trail to my personal email. Then I backed it all up to a cloud drive she didn't know existed. That night, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from the kind of focus that comes after you finally stop pretending you can reason with liars. They wanted to erase me. Fine, but if they were going to make me invisible, I was going to make them exposed. And when I found out the full reason why they'd gone this far, why my name had to disappear completely, it turned out to be worse, colder, and way more deliberate than anything I'd imagined. Because Kara wasn't just stealing credit, she was covering up something that could destroy her, and Eli was helping her bury it. By the next morning, I was done playing defense. Kara and Eli had turned me into a ghost in my own project, and HR was circling like I was the problem. So I decided to stop trying to prove my innocence quietly. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. First step, secure everything. I copied every file, every chat log, every email thread onto an encrypted external drive. I even screen recorded myself opening the metadata so no one could say I'd edited it later. Then I printed hard copies of the most damning Slack messages, especially the one about the bonus. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing: if I walked into that HR meeting empty-handed, they'd eat me alive. Next, I reached out to the only ally I had left, the client's VP of strategy, the woman who'd caught the slide note. I sent her a short, factual message from my personal email. "Hi, I know this may be unconventional, but I wanted to thank you for catching the authorship note. I've since discovered internal irregularities that may affect the integrity of the deliverables you received. If you'd like to verify the original work files, I can provide evidence through official channels." I didn't expect a reply, but 10 minutes later she wrote back, "Please forward to my legal counsel. We take these matters seriously." That was the moment I realized I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't just some analyst they could erase. I was a liability to them. When I logged into the company's shared drive that afternoon, I noticed something strange. The client transition, internal-only folder I'd found before was gone, deleted. The timestamps showed it had been wiped less than an hour earlier. They knew. That night around 9 p.m., Kara texted me, "Kara, you're making a mess. This could have been handled internally. Think carefully before you escalate." That "think carefully" line read like a threat, so I replied with one sentence that I knew would shake her. "Me, already did." I didn't elaborate. Instead, I opened a new email draft and addressed it to 3 people: HR compliance, our internal legal counsel, and the company's ethics hotline. I attached all my evidence and wrote, "Attached are records indicating potential forgery of internal documentation, misappropriation of intellectual property, and deliberate removal of authorship attribution in a client-facing contract." These actions were executed by team lead Kara Jenkins and approved by account director Eli Thompson. All timestamps and version histories are included. This report is confidential and verifiable. Then I hit send. But I didn't stop there. I scheduled a follow-up email to be automatically sent to the client's legal department if my company account got suspended or deleted within 48 hours. I went to bed with my phone on silent for the first time in weeks. By morning, the fallout had already started. My company login was locked for security reasons. I wasn't surprised. But the next thing that happened wasn't part of my plan at all, because someone from inside the company must have tipped Kara off. At 8:22 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. It was Kara. Her voice was low, controlled, but not calm. "You don't understand what you're getting into. You think this is about a deck or a bonus. It's not. You're walking into something that could ruin more than your career. Don't push it." There was a pause, then she added something that froze me. "Eli told me what's in those files. If you go public, we all go down." We all go down. I replayed it 3 times. That wasn't guilt, it was fear. But not the kind of fear that comes from being caught lying. It was something else. Something bigger. And when I dug deeper that afternoon, when I finally uncovered what Kara was so desperate to hide, it turned everything I thought I knew upside down. Because it wasn't just fraud. It was a cover-up for something far darker, and I realized I'd been sitting on evidence of it the entire time without knowing. When Kara said, "If you go public, we all go down," I thought she was bluffing. But that sentence stuck in my head all morning. So while HR was reviewing my case, I kept digging. I still had the backup drive. On it were dozens of archived client folders, including old versions of the Strayline project data. I started combing through them, looking for something, anything, that would explain her panic. That's when I found a subfolder buried 3 layers deep, named Legacy Insights. It wasn't one I'd ever seen before, but it was time-stamped months before I'd joined the Strayline project. Inside were raw CSV files, patient demographic data, trial outcomes, financial forecasts. I recognized the Strayline logo on the headers, but something about the content felt off. Half the files had sensitive medical data that shouldn't have been accessible to a marketing firm at all. And the metadata showed they weren't sent from Strayline's servers. They came from inside our company network. Someone had imported proprietary client research and used it in our presentation materials. I opened a spreadsheet labeled Predictive Patient Retention Model. The data was detailed, too detailed. It listed patient histories, prescriptions, even partial addresses. The kind of HIPAA-protected information that could cost a company millions in fines if exposed. And that's when I saw who uploaded it. Uploader, E. Thompson. Reviewed by K. Jenkins. Eli and Kara hadn't just stolen my work, they'd used illegally obtained client data to fake stronger metrics for the pitch. That's why they needed me erased, because the files were in my section of the deck. My analysis had unknowingly relied on those numbers. If it ever came out, I'd be the one accused of breaching confidentiality. My authorship wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous to them. They'd used me as the fall guy for corporate espionage. I sat there shaking, staring at the screen. For weeks, I'd thought this was a small-scale betrayal, career sabotage, credit theft. But this was a crime. A real one. At that moment, I knew Kara's voicemail wasn't a warning. It was a threat to keep me quiet. That afternoon, my personal email pinged. "The client's VP of Strategy again. Our counsel has received your files. We'd like to discuss what you've uncovered, off record for now. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" That was it. No signature line, no company logo, just a plain text message. I didn't reply right away. I spent the rest of the day watching my company's Slack quietly implode, people getting locked out, whispered messages, urgent updates about a pending audit. My phone buzzed nonstop. Around 6 p.m., I finally got a call from HR. A woman I'd never met before, speaking in that clipped, corporate tone that means bad news. "Name," she said. "Due to the ongoing compliance review, your access will remain restricted. We'll schedule a follow-up meeting once the investigation concludes." I asked, "Am I being accused of anything?" She hesitated. "Not at this time." That pause told me everything. I hung up, sat at my desk, and watched the sun drop over the city. The light caught my reflection in the window, eyes tired, jaw tight, but sharper than I'd ever seen myself. I started drafting a new document, something I'd send to both the client and the state regulator. A report, not emotional, not dramatic, just factual, precise, backed by proof. But before I finished, another email hit my inbox, from a burner account. "You're in over your head. Stop now. You have no idea who actually authorized those files." Attached was a single image, a screenshot of a signed memo approving the use of proprietary predictive models in our presentation. The signature wasn't Kara's, it wasn't Eli's, it was the CEO's. And right next to his name, in the CC line, was mine. They hadn't just set me up. They'd built the whole house around me. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there staring at that screenshot until the dawn started cutting through the blinds like pale knives. My name, sitting right there next to the CEO's on an internal memo I had never seen. Authorizing the use of predictive models built on confidential patient data. The digital signature under mine was perfect, identical to the one I'd sent Kara months ago for branding templates. The date matched the same week she'd asked for it, and now I understood the real reason she'd needed it. Kara hadn't been some desperate ladder climber trying to steal credit. She'd been protecting the company, protecting the CEO, the real architect of the fraud. She and Eli were the cleanup crew. They'd needed a fall guy, someone smart enough to produce believable work, but low enough in rank to sacrifice if things went bad. That was me. When the data scandal eventually broke, they'd point at me, the mid-level strategist who accidentally incorporated restricted files, who misunderstood authorization, who acted without supervision. I could already hear the PR language forming in my head. "We are deeply disappointed that an isolated employee acted outside compliance standards." One person. Me. That was why Kara smirked in that glass conference room. That's why Eli's name showed up in my files. He was laundering my work through his account so that every trace of wrongdoing ended at my signature. And the CEO? He was far away, untouchable, sitting on the 28th floor with his view of the skyline and a signed memo that would look perfectly legitimate when this all went down. It was diabolically neat. I spent the next day in silence, trying to make sense of how long this had been planned. Looking back, all the pieces fit too well. Kara mentoring me, Eli pushing me onto the Strayline project. The sudden rush for signatures, the brand consistency, email. Every bit of it designed to position me in the right place when the trap closed. I realized Kara's cruelty wasn't spontaneous, it was calculated. She knew how to gaslight me just enough to make me doubt myself, to keep me quiet. The late-night messages, the "you're too emotional," the fake praise right before the next betrayal, it was conditioning. She wasn't doing it out of spite. She was doing it to make me predictable. The more I thought about it, the colder it got. I checked company records from earlier projects. Found another analyst's name buried in a similar pattern, brief authorship, followed by deletion, then silence. I searched LinkedIn. That analyst had left 6 months before. Her profile headline read, "Former marketing strategist, currently on leave." That's when I knew this wasn't the first time. This company had done this before, picking bright, hungry analysts, giving them too much responsibility, then erasing them when things got illegal. Each time, leadership came out clean. Each time, the fall guy disappeared quietly. And Kara, she was the hand that made it happen, the loyal fixer who cleaned the mess, who did what the higher-ups wouldn't touch directly. She didn't need to destroy me because she hated me. She did it because that's who she was, someone who'd rather burn another person's life than lose her place at the table. That realization hit harder than any of the betrayals. There was no misunderstanding, no miscommunication. Kara was deliberate, methodical, and utterly loyal to power, not people. By the time the sun set, I wasn't scared anymore. Just calm, focused. I knew exactly what I had to do next. Not to hurt them, but to make sure none of them could ever hide again. I met with the client's VP the next morning at a quiet cafe near the Capitol. She was early, waiting with a plain folder already open in front of her. No small talk, just business. "Show me what you have," she said. I handed her the drive, everything. Metadata screenshots, Slack logs, the fake signatures, the CEO memo. She scrolled silently for almost 10 minutes. When she finally looked up, her voice was steady but low. "This isn't just misrepresentation," she said. "This is a federal compliance breach." I nodded. "They used me as cover." She closed the folder. "Not anymore." That afternoon, Strayline's legal department filed a formal complaint with both state regulators and our company's corporate compliance board. Within hours, the news hit internally. Client alleges data misuse. Independent audit underway. The office went quiet. Slack channels froze. Everyone suddenly remembered they'd scheduled PTO. 3 days later, HR called again, but this time the tone was different. Careful, too careful. "We'd like to discuss your previous report," the woman said. "There's been some movement on the investigation." When I showed up, Eli wasn't there. Neither was Kara. Instead, the CEO himself sat across from me with a grim, practiced face. "Thank you for coming in," he started. "As you know, we're cooperating fully with regulators. This situation exists because your team forged my signature and stole client data," I cut in. He blinked, taken aback that I wasn't going to play polite. "I understand you're upset," he said, his voice low and lawyered. "But these allegations could impact everyone's careers. Let's handle this carefully." "Carefully," I said. "You mean quietly." I slid a printed copy of the memo across the table, the one with his fake signature next to mine. "This is already with the client's legal team and the state board. You can handle it however you want." He didn't respond, just stared at the paper for a long time. His jaw ticked once. Then he stood, walked out without a word. The next morning, the company announced that Kara and Eli had been terminated effective immediately pending investigation. HR sent out a vague all-staff email about breaches of integrity and data concerns. A week later, the CEO stepped down to focus on personal matters. And me. I got reinstated, quietly, awkwardly, like they didn't know what to do with me now that I wasn't their pawn. They offered me a promotion, a raise, a PR apology. I declined every single thing. Instead, I sent one last email to the entire office, subject line, transparency. I attached my original deck, the one with the footer on slide 12, and I wrote, "This is the presentation that started everything. If anyone ever tells you protecting your work makes you difficult, remember what happens when you let people steal it. They stop at nothing until they own your silence too." Then I walked out. The company collapsed 6 months later after the audit findings went public. The story trended for a day. Austin Consultancy falsified client data. Kara's name was buried in the article, but mine wasn't. Now I work for a different firm. Smaller, quieter, no kombucha tap, no fake mentorships, just people who give credit where it's due. Every once in a while, I still think about Kara's last message. "You don't understand what you're getting into." She was right. I didn't understand it then. But I do now. I learned the hard way that people like her don't care about winning, they care about surviving, even if it means killing your name to keep theirs alive. But here's the thing about erasing someone. When you try to make them invisible, you give them the freedom to burn everything down. And I did.